here in the paddock down at located on Grant Sims's property with Adam O'Toole, SoilCQuest soil scientist, and we're here to talk about a 4-year project called Multi-Graze, where we're setting up to look at all the different ways that we can sequester carbon in a normal farming system. What are all the tools that we can use? So Adam, I might get you to explain the project and how it all fits together and what the purpose of it is, and how we're actually going to measure things here.
Yep. So we've been collaborating with Grant for a few years, and Grant's known to many as someone who's innovating in the space of regenerative agriculture with multi-species cover crops and biofertilizers and using animals to do a lot of the work for soil quality and soil health. So we've decided to try and capture what Grant's doing on his farm by setting up this farm experiment. And on this paddock we're standing on, it's 70 hectares, and we're going to split it in half, and on one side there'll be set stock grazing, and on the other half there'll be strip grazing. And over the whole paddock there'll be planted Grant's famous mixes of winter and summer cover crops. Can you tell us a bit more about it, Grant?
Yeah, so when we come into the winter, we'll do probably a winter super mix there, which is about 14 species. So we're getting a lot of plant diversity there, and essentially a diversity of roots to help build soils. At the moment, we've got a summer mix here. We had some rainfall through the, we're usually true dry through the summer, but we had some summer rain, and we put this mix in to try and get the summer diversity and some taprooted plants in to improve this soil. This paddock's one on our farm, probably our poorest paddock, to be honest, on the farm. We bought this paddock maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it's got problems with soil structure. So we're having trouble in the winter with it being too wet at times. We have problems with infiltration, and then in the summer it's too dry. And you can see here it's a pretty average summer cover crop, but I thought in a project like this, instead of putting one of your better paddocks in, let's start at the bottom, get one of our poorest soils, and see if we can improve that through adding diversity and grazing management.
It's worth just having a look along the side here. We've selected a spot for the video where we've gone from quite a good stand into something that struggled a bit, and it's all to do with the variation across this paddock, the sedicity, and where the water lies and where it doesn't lie. So this has all been mapped to get the different strata, so that we can test the carbon with like-for-like soil types. Adam, you might go into a bit of depth on the way we've mapped this, because we've employed some sort of good technologies and that to get a really good feel for where the soil type changes are and so on.
Yeah, so the approach that I took was to start with a lot of the great data that's already out there in Australia, courtesy of universities and CSIRO, to map soil organic carbon in Australia. So the first approach we took was to look at that data and all the different environmental variables that we have over the large landscapes in Australia. So the soil organic carbon map of Australia was updated in 2023, and we used that as a baseline or a guesstimate about what is happening on this paddock. And coming here today, I think a lot of it rings true. I've been taking soil samples today, and the areas which are also showing up on satellite and NDVI images of being green and productive. When we take soil samples under these areas, I'm seeing big differences in soil colour, and also the friability of the soil and the shape and the size of the aggregates. So we've basically split this paddock up into 2 zones, or 2 strata, one being lower carbon, lower productivity, and one being higher carbon, higher productivity. Considering that we're splitting the paddock in half, I've been careful to have both of those zones, or making sure that when we split the paddock, that both of those zones are representative on both sides, so that we're not favouring either set stock grazing or strip grazing.
Yep. So it's a systems piece, but we've overlain good scientific methodology so that we can, over a 4-year period, we can gather really good data to show how we've influenced the soil characteristics, so your soil structure and aggregate structure as you're talking about, but also how much carbon can we build in these different soil types using this type of system.
Yes.
So we can see the cattle over having a bit of a rest in the midday heat, but it's going to be grazed by cattle, obviously. Might talk a bit about how we're going to manage the measurement of the data, the collars and the walkover weighing and so on, and where that fits in.
Yeah, well, so, you know, working with commercial farmers who have limited time to spare, and we can't be asking Grant to go out and do, you know, too much above and beyond his normal farm practices. So we're trying to employ technologies which can help us to collect data. One of those is, or to make the job easier, so the first one is the virtual collars, these electronic collars, which are currently in Victoria only allowed under research purposes. And so Grant will be using this through the use of his mobile phone to not put up a physical electric fence, but a virtual electric fence where the cattle have a collar around their neck, and they receive an audible signal, warning signal, when they get too close to the fence. As they get closer, they get a few sounds, and they're trained in a short period. They do receive an electric shock, a mild electric shock, if they get too close to the fence.
It's actually less than an electric fence, I believe.
Yes.
The shock. So,
now, I've had personal experience from this in other projects where animals learn very quickly about this and stay within the invisible fence. So we're quite excited to see how this will work. It'll save Grant time in having to move electric fences around.
Yep.
The second technology we're using is Australian-made OptiWay technology, which is basically something that you drag behind you on the ute, bring it out into the field, and the animal puts its two hooves on the front and licks a lick block, and the two front weight of the animal is calibrated to the full weight of the animal, so we're able to get the live weight of the animal as they're grazing on the cover crops.
Data logged every day.
Data logged every day, and that data goes up into the cloud.
Get really integrous data.
Yep.
So the other thing we might circle back, since we've got Grant the man himself here to actually talk about these cover crops, because it's an important component. The overview that I sort of see here is we're trying to pull on every lever that we can think of to sequester carbon. So multi-species cover cropping with different root activity and so on going on. There's a rationale behind that Grant can speak to. Our rotation will include the carbon endophyte from loam, so we'll have the fungi, carbon fungi in here sequestering carbon as well, and we'll be able to compare it to if we've got the same mix but we're strategically grazing it rather than set stocking it. Can we increase the exudation of the roots by strategic rapid grazing techniques to influence the carbon metric? Grant, you might just speak to, I'm just looking down on the ground here, we've got a real diversity of species. Can you talk us through, I know there's a rationale behind every single plant that you put in the mix, so it might be just interesting just to talk to the species that you've got here and why you've got them in there, what you're expecting them to do for us here.
Yeah, well, what we've got one of our summer mixes, summer north mix, and what we try and do is get as much diversity in. So we want some legumes in there fixing nitrogen. We want taprooted plants in to go and break open soil, but they can also stabilise and liberate minerals and scavenge things that are leached through the soil and bring them up. And
So what have we got there?
that's some veg. We've got some millet there, we've got some forage sorghum. Sunflowers are one of my favourites. We've got sort of heavy clays here that can be low in calcium, high in magnesium, high in sodium, and that make the soils hard setting. They've got a powerful root that can penetrate through that, but they're also very good at bringing up calcium and zinc. Bring that up, and this is what this soil's generally are lacking: calcium and zinc. And they're very fungal plant too, so they can swing the bacterial to fungal ratio to be more fungal.
They're great mycorrhizal host, aren't they?
We've dug some of these up and put them under a microscope, and it can look similar to what the soil in a rainforest is with the fungal activity around these plants. So very good. And then when we go into our winter mixes, same again. We've got your radishes and turnips, really good at scavenging and bringing up those minerals that leach through the soil when we get flooding events and things. We've got the legumes, we've got plants in there to liberate phosphorus and all kinds of things. But essentially, with the more root systems we got, the more areas of soil we can explore, and that's what, you know, building carbon and what these guys are all about is how do we do that. So we're just looking at all the levers we can pull to help facilitate more carbon sequestration, and diversity of roots, the endophyte on the seed, grazing management, and then being mindful not to do things that are detrimental to that. So, you know, reduce or no tillage and you know, foliar feeding and stimulating the plant rather than force feeding the soil.
The other thing that we'll achieve here is not only measure these physical characteristics of soil health and productivity, and weight gain and so on, and through on to soil carbon. The end goal is, can we make more money doing this, really, so we can provide an economic signal for other growers to say, okay, here's how you might be able to actually do it and make a better return per year. So in this data acquisition that Adam will be acquiring, we'll be getting the economics overlaying this system. So with how much it cost to do it, and what our live weight gain was over a 4-year rotation, what did the economics look like? Did we come out on head? But in this particular situation, this is in a carbon project, a second crop carbon project, so we can monetise the carbon in this system. So we've got the main crop up above, which is our grazing crop and our livestock, and our second crop, which is our carbon crop underneath. So we've got two enterprises, one literally stacked on top of the other, and we can actually do the economics on carbon farming in a grazing situation where we're trying to maximise the grazing and maximising the carbon sequestered, and hopefully leave the paddock in a far better structural position than it was before. So for ongoing sustainability as a metric of success as well.
The other thing I'd add in here, Webby, when I've done plenty of these days, and I've done this before in different paddocks and trials, but you know, as farmers, essentially we want our soils in the best condition we can so that we can be profitable and make money. And this is a way that I've found that most times we come in to fix a problem soil, it involves us spending money on ameliorants and ripping and different inputs, and then we've got a huge cost that we've had to outlay to repair that soil to get it back to being productive and profitable. This is a way we can do this while making money. Like, we're making money grazing these things, we're making money fixing carbon. So this is a fun way, and yeah, I'm really excited to see where we can go with this in the next 4 years.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Grant.